There sure are a lot of last Metroids in the Metroid series. There are over 10 games in the Metroid franchise, and your primary objective in every single one is to kill the last Metroid. The issue here is quite evident. If there is more than one game, then Samus routinely fails to kill the last Metroid. Except, at the end of every game, Samus does kill the last Metroid. There's never really an explanation given for why the series is basically Groundhog Day in space. It seems like the story answers to some sort of canon. There's a corresponding comic book series after all, but creators seems happy to overlook the fact that there's always another Metroid. Considering the wretched scope of some of these enemies, it must be exhausting for Samus to regularly find out that her job isn't quite done. More Metroid Prime 108 of 382 list of games with girls in the lead, and female protagonists 41 of 178 the best Nintendo games, ranked 60 of 91 video games that should be movies. In Red Dead Redemption, Jack Marston is really good with a gun for no reason at all. Red Dead Redemption culminates with a fitting end for gunslinger John Marston, who goes down fighting in a hail of bullets. 3 years later, his son Jack, who is in his late teens, gets his revenge by hunting down and killing his father's killers. For the player, change in characters is negligible in terms of controls. Jack and John handle identically to one another. However, Jack is a studious, non-violent boy who is the polar opposite of his blood-soaked father. After Jack flips out and becomes a hardened gunslinger, the story glosses over the fact that John never actually taught him how to shoot a gun. So, where exactly did Jack become an ace killer? He must have spent every waking moment after his pa's death shooting beer bottles, because violence seems to come naturally to the young lad. More Red Dead Redemption. List of all Red Dead Redemption characters: 370 of 617 Sony PlayStation 3 games. List of PS3 console games: 19 of 178 the best video game franchises of all time. Link teaches himself a song in Ocarina of Time via time travel. When Link visits the well in Kakariko village as an adult, he finds that it's run dry, and a nearby man in a windmill is outraged because 7 years ago, a mean kid caused the drought by playing a song on an ocarina. The man then teaches Link the song, which allows the player to go back in time to rectify the issue. It's heavily implied that Link was the kid with the ocarina, and that the windmill man learned the song from him 7 years prior. With that in mind, it doesn't really make sense why the man decides to teach it to the person he learned it from. This particular plot hole, known as the Song of Storms paradox, is relatively famous, and many have desperately tried to provide a logical explanation for the issue. While some fans' reasoning is intriguing, it's more likely that the game's writers just slipped up a little. More The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time 27 of 1371, the 100+ best video games of all time, ranked by fans 12 of 271, the most compelling video game storylines ever 5 of 465, the most addictive video games of all time. The controlling powers in Bioshock are baffling over a trash pile. The story of Bioshock centers on the conflict between two warring powers, those in support of Andrew Ryan, the city's original founder, and the enigmatic Atlas, who at first seems to represent the workers' unions. While the two groups struggle for total control of Rapture makes for an interesting framing narrative, one has to wonder why anyone would want to control Rapture in the first place. At its peak, Rapture housed the world's brightest and richest minds, and presented a stage for numerous scientific breakthroughs. However, by the time the player is sent to kill Ryan, Rapture has fallen on hard times. The city is riddled with leaks, and the only inhabitants are drug-addled maniacs who prowl through otherwise abandoned establishments looking to get their fix. The only people who don't fit this model are still unarguably crazy. Sander Cohen enlists you to kill all his students, and Peach Wilkins lives in a freezer, and it seems as though food supplies are running dangerously low. Rapture is precariously close to total ruin, so why do its two most powerful inhabitants go to such lengths to take control of it? Don't either of them have anything better to do?
Ghosts bring you back to life in Destiny unless they don't.
Destiny begins with the player's guardian being brought back from the dead via an AI ghost that remains the player's companion throughout the game. Even in the zones where respawning is not permitted, the ghost faithfully stays by the player's side. Wait, if the ghost can revive a guardian from death, why do those no-respawn zones even exist? Of course, Destiny doesn't bother trying to connect this design choice to the story. These zones exist solely to increase the game's difficulty level, and are not rationalized with even the flimsiest pseudoscientific facts. If only the devs had thought to separate the ghost and the player at certain times, fixing this plot hole really would have been that easy. More Destiny 187 of 465, the most addictive video games of all time. 66 of 177, the best video games of the 2010s. Ranked 25 of 61, the best PlayStation 4 shooter games you should be playing.
No one notices the giant clock tower fall apart in Uncharted 4, A Thief's End.
One particularly maddening scene in Uncharted 4 finds Drake in a populated city in Madagascar. After making his way through crowds of people, Drake winds up in the inside a clock tower. Shortly thereafter, Drake wrecks the tower's inner mechanisms and falls several stories as the gears of the clock come apart. Drake barely survives the fall, and is seen coughing amid the ruins of the clock tower. However, when he opens the door of the tower, he encounters a bustling market of people who apparently didn't even register the destruction. It's a super cool scene to play through, but that doesn't mean it makes any sense.
GTA Roman 4 stars Niko Bellic, a reformed killer who sometimes still drives his car through crowds of pedestrians.
When it was first released, Grand Theft Auto Roman 4 was hailed by many as the godfather of video games, thanks in part to its complex, sprawling story. In the game, players take control of Niko Bellic, an ex-soldier who served in the Yugoslav War, and who is trying his hardest to escape his bloody past. While the cutscenes do a good job of expressing the character's motivations, all bets are off when the player actually gets to take control of Niko. Ludonarrative dissonance is a term used to describe instances wherein the way a player interacts with a game's world does not align with the stated plot of the game. Grand Theft Auto Roman 4 serves as a tentpole example of this phenomena, as no one who is playing a GTA game wants to avoid violence the way Niko does. A result, players can mow down large crowds of pedestrians mere moments after the protagonist finishes reasserting his pacifism. This issue comes to a head about a third of the way through the game, when the player is forced to kill one of two individuals. In the context of the story, Niko is horrified that he's forced to take a human life, but it's likely that the player has already killed over 100 civilians without even thinking about it. More Grand Theft Auto Roman for 145 of 617 Sony PlayStation 3 games. List of PS3 console games, 64 of 271. The most compelling video game storylines ever, 157 of 1371. The 100 plus best video games of all time, ranked by fans.
How exactly did a human come to lead the Locust Horde in Gears of War 3?
The Locust Horde in Gears of War hates humanity and wants nothing more than to eradicate them. With that in mind, it makes absolutely no sense why their leader is revealed to be a human woman in the franchise's third installment. The antagonist of Gears of War 3 is a woman named Mira who leads the push to destroy humanity. But how did she come to find herself in this position of power? At no point does the game explain how a human comes to lead a species whose entire existence revolves around overthrowing and killing the humans. Did she just fool them by dressing kind of like them? If that's the case, then the conflict should have ended when Marcus and donned Locust armor in one of Gears of War 2's bonus scenes. More Gears of War 3, 619 of 1371. The 100 plus best video games of all time, ranked by fans, 133 of 271. The most compelling video game storylines ever, 54 of 91. Video games that should be movies.
Cloud and Company. Don't use a Phoenix Down to revive Aerith in Final Fantasy Roman 7.
In the world of Final Fantasy, Phoenix Down is a magical item that has the power to bring people back from the dead. To finish any FF game, players are basically required to stock up on them. This begs the question, why is the death of Aerith, a major Final Fantasy Roman 7 character, not immediately rectified? Aerith is one of the first characters players are given access to, and prior to her getting permanently murdered, there's a good chance that she's already been revived multiple times via Phoenix Downs. With this in mind, seems utterly ridiculous that she can't be saved, just because her death happens to come at a dramatically pivotal moment in the game's story. This disconnect mars the series' storytelling as a whole, but is also unavoidable, as no one wants to play a game that ends the first time the player dies.
Bane forgets Batman's real identity after the prequel game Arkham Origins.
While it is the third game to be released in the franchise, Batman Arkham Origins serves as a prequel to the first two games. Since Bane is unaware of Batman's true identity in Arkham Asylum, it stands to reason that he's also clueless in Arkham Origins. However, this is inexplicably not the case. In Origins, Bane discovers Bruce's alter ego, which prompts the villain to bomb the Batcave. However, Batman and Bane have numerous run-ins in both Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, including a temporary, fraught alliance in the latter, but the story gives no indication that Bane knows who the Dark Knight is. On an unrelated note, it's a little awkward that Batman wields advanced gadgets in Origins that he doesn't have access to in the other games. The discontinuity is explained offhandedly. The game essentially says that Bats has access to every tool, but chooses to only bring a select few with him. The whole thing comes off as pathetically slapdash.
Snake's sacrifice is pointless at the end of Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots.
As Guns of the Patriots reaches its climax, there's a scene in which someone must traverse a corridor irradiated with microwaves. Raiden the cyborg could easily do it, yet for some reason this duty is assigned to Snake the human, who will almost certainly die in the process. As Snake crawls down the hall, his body literally cooks, and the player is forced to continue on as the character suffers. Snake's robotic protege would have been totally fine, yet Snake is insistent on sacrificing himself. The scene makes no sense, but it comes at the end of a remarkably emotional narrative, so it's still enough to bring the waterworks.
It's super helpful that the Reapers bring their life source to the humans' Mass Effect 3.
It's super helpful that the Reapers bring their life source to the humans' Mass Effect 3.
Pretty much the entire plot of Heavy Rain is a red herring.
Pretty much the entire plot of Heavy Rain is a red herring. Desmond stabs Lucy in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood because he's under the control of gods that specifically don't control the assassins. No one really needs to die at the end of Fallout 3.
Hey guys, thank you so much for the support and likes and comments down below, and also thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to see you in the next video. Then take care, bye.